It's the first meetup of our meetup group. The title of the group is ICOs, the future of startup financing. And please note that at the end of the sentence there is a question mark. So it's not a statement, it's actually a question. And the intention of the group is to bring a bit more sanity to this whole ICO discussion. As you know, there is still a lot of hype in the market, there is some scam, there is some fraud in the market, and well, we are here to show a bit more, to talk about facts, to show some data, and hopefully to clarify things and to bring a bit more sanity to the whole discussion. Before we get started, I would like to say a big thank you to our host and sponsor for tonight. That's Andreas Dengler from DCMN, and Andy is the CEO and co-founder of DCMN. It's a marketing agency for digital brands. They do have customers like Outfittery, Gymno, Home24, so a lot of well-known brands. And yes, I would like to say thank you for sponsoring this event tonight. We will also have some pizza afterwards, and as we are a pretty small group, there will definitely be enough pizza for everyone, and you will even probably be able to take some pizza home with you if you like. So let's see. So anyway,
thank you, Florian. So I'm also here for doing a short advertising break before the real meetup will start. I will tell you a little bit more about DCMN. I promise I do it very, very quickly, so hopefully it's not getting boring. So we are a growth marketing, or we offering growth marketing solutions for digital brands, and we are an independent owned marketing company. We have around 200 employees, and all of them working around the world. We have several offices, and here in Berlin it's our headquarters. We got founded here in Berlin in 2010, and yeah, here is our main office more or less. Then what are we doing? We are growing the market leaders of tomorrow. That's very important for us. So we are not focusing on these traditional brands which already are very famous in specific countries. We want to build the market leaders of tomorrow. How are we doing that? We are bringing together creativity, media, and tech to drive the marketing ROI of our clients. We are ourselves a growth champion, so growth is very important for us. You can see it here, what we have achieved in the last couple of years. Here you can see a couple of clients we are working with. And maybe you are wondering why we are hosting this meetup together with Florian, and why this is interesting for us. So for us, when you have a look on our client list, most of them, they have a lot of venture capital behind it. And they are very investor driven at the end. And we are helping them to achieve the numbers which they need to make their investors happy. If now this venture capital scene is changing a little bit, and not the really famous US VCs are financing all of our clients, then they will get the money from somewhere else. And probably this will also change the whole market environment in which we are. So that's the reason why ICOs and the future of startup financing is very important for us as a company. And yeah, also very important, if somebody is here and is looking for a new challenge, we are definitely looking for new people. Feel free to come to me after the meetup, and we can have a quick chat. We're happy to have you here. Thank you.
Andy, thank you very much for introducing us to DCMN. So, well, anyway, let's get started with some ICO and blockchain talk. When talking about ICOs and blockchain with my friends or people from my network, I quickly learned that usually there are two different camps of people. On the one side, there are the crypto critics, and on the other side, there are usually the crypto enthusiasts. And the crypto enthusiasts usually are those people who put this label on their LinkedIn profile. I don't know if you realize that probably many people in your network having this label being a crypto enthusiast on it. And usually the crypto critics are saying things like, this is just a hype, this is all fraud and scam, it's all bullshit, there's no intrinsic value, a huge bubble, all tokens are worthless. On the other hand, the crypto enthusiasts are saying things like, when Lambo, when Moon, this is the new internet, everything will be decentralized, everything will be tokenized, there'll be a huge token economy, and on the way, let's all get rich. So I would consider myself of being somewhere in the middle of those two camps. I don't know, do we have a real crypto critic here? Someone who really would say anything from the no real crypto critic? Someone here, or maybe you're too scared to raise your hand. And yes, I would put myself somewhere in the middle of those two groups. I'm coming from an, let's say, old school entrepreneurial background, old school angel investing background. I've built two companies. The first company was United Domains. It's now part of one and one group. The second company is Neubau Kompass. It's a company in the real estate space. Actually, it's a marketplace for residential developments. I'm also an active angel investor. That's basically my full-time job. I do have seed investments in about 30 startups. Most of them are from Berlin. You probably do know, obviously, Fedora, maybe Asana Rebel, Artnight, Pixie, 99 Shares. So yeah, I'm coming from this old school entrepreneurial background, and by summer, late summer last year, I realized that something has changed, or actually the two things have changed. Literally within a couple of weeks, all the people in my network suddenly started talking about Bitcoin and blockchain. And this all happened summer last year. I don't know, for me this was sort of a tipping point. I don't know if you had a similar experience last year, that at some point in time, usually everyone was talking about it. And I had the same experience. And secondly, as a startup investor, I'm talking to startups on a daily basis, and I'm looking for new startups and good founders where I can invest in. And it happened that when talking to founders, the startup founders told me, Florian, well, you may be a good investor, but actually we don't need your money because we are doing an ICO, so we can raise millions of dollars without giving away any equity. So why would we take your 50K check? This doesn't make sense to us. And that was actually the time, summer last year, I realized that as an angel investor, I really had to get into this ICO and blockchain thing and try to understand what's going on the market. And as an angel investor, I'm usually looking for startups disrupting markets and disrupting some industries. And this was the first time that I was sort of scared as an angel investor of being disrupted myself, of being disrupted that no one actually needs me as an angel investor, because everyone at some point in time is doing an ICO, and so there are probably no jobs for VCs and angel investors anymore. And so that experience was about summer last year, and I started to get into this blockchain thing. And what I did was that I started to do some research on the German blockchain ICO market. I basically built up an Excel sheet with all German blockchain startups, all German ICOs. I had, at some point in time, I had a couple of thousand data points, and by beginning of this year, I decided to put all this information on a public website that's now Chain.de. It's basically a directory of all German blockchain startups and all German ICOs, so you might want to check it out. So anyway, enough storytelling. Let's look at some data. The first question would be how many blockchain startups are there in Germany? And the answer is there are about 105 blockchain startups. That's basically the German blockchain market, all the logos here. So by looking at the number 105, would you have guessed more or less, or what do you think? What would have been your guess?
Are they mostly in Berlin or?
Yeah, very good question. That's actually the next slide, but
Sorry for spoiling.
but that's all German blockchain startups. So it's not just Berlin blockchain startups. But obviously you're right. My next slide is about the location, about the geography, and as you might have guessed, most of those 105 blockchain startups are located in Berlin. Here are the numbers. There are 58 blockchain startups in Germany as of March this year. There are about 10 in Munich, third is Frankfurt with 8 startups, so Berlin definitely is the blockchain capital of Germany. And the other startups are pretty much spread all over Germany, and even in some smaller cities there are maybe one or two, sometimes there are one or two blockchain startups. So let's look at the industry focus of the German blockchain startups. Most blockchain startups are in the finance sector. I think that's not surprisingly because Bitcoin is sort of has been the first killer app for blockchain technology, so I think it's not surprised that most blockchain startups focus on fintech, insurtech, investing, things like that. So next is the public chain infrastructure. There are quite some startups in that area, and then you have something like digital identity, intellectual property, enterprise infrastructure, IoT, some real estate startups. We do have Realisto here tonight, Leonard, who is in the real estate space, and there are a couple of more, digital health and entertainment, e-commerce. So, but the main focus obviously is the finance sector that probably could change in the future. Let's look at the founders of the blockchain startups, at the male-female distribution, and as you might have expected, the blockchains, there are hardly any female founders in the blockchain space, and yeah, I think at least we have some women here tonight. Are you a blockchain founder or a startup founder? Or any?
Pre-founder.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool, okay. So I actually don't know does anyone know the male-female ratio for the whole startup market? I couldn't find the number, but it's probably higher than 5 to 6. It should definitely be higher. What do you think?
Yeah, no, just to know that crypto is so far fortunately really like male dominated.
Yeah.
It will change.
And if you look at the 105 German blockchain startups, there's actually just one female CEO, and that's your CEO, that's Zoe, and I didn't find any other female CEO of a German blockchain startup, so it's just Zoe from Neufund. And so yeah, anyway, that's the male-female distribution regarding the blockchain founders. Let's now come to ICOs, to initial coin offerings. First of all, I think it's important to understand that not all blockchain startups are ICO startups. So not every blockchain startup out there is doing an ICO. That's sort of optional. But the other way around, all ICO startups are blockchain startups. And that, for the second half of the statement, that might change in the future due to the rise of security and equity tokens, and there will definitely be off-chain ICO startups in the future, and Sergey and Neufund actually are working on a platform to make that possible, that off-chain startups are able to do an ICO and to sell security tokens. So, but for now, basically all ICO startups are blockchain startups. So once again, let's look at the number. There are about 43 ICO startups. So out of the 105 startups, pretty much 50% are doing an ICO or ICO startups, and there are all the logos here. You might know something like Gnosis, Lisk, IOTA, Neufund, for example, SafeDroid. And let's dig a little bit deeper into the data. We see that about 20 startups have done a successful ICO in the past. About 15 startups are currently in the process of doing an ICO, are currently selling tokens, and about 25 startups have publicly announced that they are planning to do an ICO. And I guess there are probably a couple of dozen startups in sort of a stealth mode who are preparing an ICO but haven't announced that in any way publicly yet. So here are some examples for successful German ICOs. First we have Envion. They raised about 100 million January this year. They are in the mining space, in the renewable energy space, and they are doing sort of a combination of Bitcoin mining with renewable energies. And technically, I think they aren't a startup anymore. They have been are an established company, but they managed to raise about $100 million within a couple of weeks, so quite successful. Then, just a couple of weeks ago, SafeDroid, a Frankfurt fintech startup, closed an ICO with 35 million. We have Rain, 32 million. We have CopyTrack. They are in the copyright space. They managed to raise about 10 million. And we do have also Realisto, a real estate blockchain startup. Leonardo, the CEO and founder, is here tonight. And after my presentation, Leonardo is going to share the Realisto ICO story.
What's went wrong?
Pardon? yeah. So maybe I just skipped got. The comma's wrong there probably. Anyway, that's just some examples of successful German ICOs. Next, I would like you to have a closer look at the legal structure of tokens. It's basically there are from the legal point of view, there are three different kinds of tokens. There we do have utility tokens, security tokens, and cryptocurrencies, crypto tokens. The German translation for security tokens would be Wertpapier. It's a bit confusing because security here doesn't mean Sicherheit. It's a legal term, and it's best translated to German language as a Wertpapier token. And so basically, let's start with cryptocurrencies. These are tokens. They are used as a medium of exchange or as a store of value. The famous example, obviously, is Bitcoin. There's Litecoin, Cardano, and a couple of others. But the main thing is that they are only used as a medium of exchange or as a store of value. In the middle, we do have security tokens, Wertpapier tokens in German. They basically, as an investor, grant you an equity stake in the company. So they work like a Aktie, like a Wertpapier. On the left, we do have utility tokens. Utility tokens, it's in layman's terms, it's best to think of a prepaid voucher for a non-existing service. You are, during an ICO, you are buying those tokens, and hopefully in the future, those tokens will work as a, let's say, as a voucher for a service the startup is promising to develop yet. And this is this legal structure is very important if you are looking at ICO startups from an investor's point of view. And once again, if you look at the data, 99% of all ICO startups are selling utility tokens. So there are hardly any security tokens yet, and obviously there are some cryptocurrencies, but pretty much all the ICO startups you're seeing out there, and all the German ICO startups basically are doing a sale of utility tokens. And there are two reasons for that. First is to avoid regulatory issues of being qualified as a security, as a Wertpapier, because that might cause some trouble regarding BaFin and other regulatory things here. And from the technical point of view, basically all utility tokens are based on the ERC-20 standard on top of Ethereum blockchain, and that's quite a best practice use case, and from a technical point of view it seems to be quite doable. Anyway, once again, let's look at utility tokens from the startup's point of view. If you look at the upsides and downsides of doing a utility token ICO, from the startup's point of view, there are a lot of upsides regarding utility tokens. First, you can raise capital without giving away equity. You can raise capital without giving away control, raise capital without vesting schemes or any lockup periods, and you'll also be able to build a community even before the launch of your product. On the downside, there are also a couple of things. There may be some regulatory issues regarding utility tokens, especially when someday your utility token might be qualified by BaFin as a security, then you might get into real trouble, and obviously the regulatory landscape is moving fast and changing pretty much on a weekly or monthly basis here. And preparing an ICO can be expensive. There are high legal fees and marketing expenses. I think Leonardo will go into detail more on that later. So once again, looking from the startup point of view, doing a utility ICO basically seems like a free lunch. You could get millions of dollars without giving away equity, without giving away control. So from a startup point of view, this definitely makes a lot of sense. But now let's look at the investor's point of view. Once again, we have some upsides and some downsides here. So for the investor's point of view, a utility token, or the good thing about a utility token is that it can be traded on a secondary market, which as a startup investor could give you early liquidity. Usually as an angel investor or VC, you are waiting about 7 to 10 years for a liquidity event, for an exit, and so a utility token could give you early equity just by selling it on a secondary market. And obviously there's the upside of quick wins by doing token flipping and doing some momentum trading. Let's say you're buying the token at a discounted price at the pre-sale, and then just after the start of, or after the end of the ICO, and when the trading at the exchanges begin and you sell it at nominal value, you might be able to make 50% by just within a couple of weeks. So, but basically from the investor's point of view, there are just these two upsides, and there are a lot of downsides. As an investor, you don't get any shareholder rights in the startup. There is obviously no exit and no dividend participation. You have no pro rata rights, no liquidation preferences, no control, no information rights. Basically, investing in the startup is a black box. The only thing you have is the white paper, maybe some fancy landing pages and some discussion with the community on a Telegram channel, but basically that's not a real due diligence. And and there are no valuation guidelines for utility tokens yet, so no one has come up with a framework or model how to define the value of a utility token yet. And so as an investor, there is the chance that you're probably paying too much for the utility token. And so once again, if you look at this list, there are a lot of downsides for the investor, and pretty much the only upside is that you are able to make quick wins by doing some momentum trading here. And it has working quite well since a couple of years. And the big question for me is how long might that still work, and when will be the point in time when this momentum trading and token flipping might stop working. So to sum up, there are two big issues with utility tokens. Utility tokens only make sense for business models based on decentralized protocols or networks, and business models for which decentralization gives you a real competitive advantage to existing centralized market players. For example, let's say if you are a startup doing a dating app, and you're doing a dating app on the blockchain, and you're doing an ICO for your dating app, I would really wonder as an investor if doing a dating app in a decentralized way would give you any competitive advantage to Tinder or any existing market players. So I don't see it. And another example, there's a German startup doing a food delivery service on the blockchain doing an ICO. So I don't know how that could mean a competitive advantage to let's say, to Fedora, just storing the data in a decentralized way, maybe having some economic incentive system for the driver. So it's still that I think that's in the meantime common sense in the market. There are only a few real good use cases for utility tokens. On the other hand, there are still many startups who try to capitalize on this sort of hype in the market. And the second issue, to sum up, is the misalignment of investor interests and founders' interests, as a utility token doesn't grant you any shareholder rights in the startup. So the value of the utility token is decoupled from the success of the startup and ultimately from the performance of the founders. And actually, being an investor, that's not what you want. As an investor, you want to be in the same boat with the startup founders. If the startup is successful, you want to be successful as an investor. And if the startup fails, you know that you have failed as an investor. And just decoupling that alignment, I think, is a huge, or will be a huge problem. Anyway, so we have talked a lot about utility tokens, and I think that the current wave of utility tokens will be over, let's say, probably in the next 6 to 12 months, and we are going to see a second wave of ICOs, and the second wave of ICOs will be about the sale of security tokens, and actually the market potential for security tokens is at least 100 times bigger than the market potential for utility tokens, because pretty much every off-chain startup would be able to do a security token sale as well. And so, so my prediction for this market would be that 2008 we are still seeing many utility token ICOs, but this current wave will be over, and there will be a second wave of security token ICOs. So, well, that brings me pretty much to my last slide. So what happens when venture capital meets the blockchain? And I think in the future, venture capital and blockchain somehow have to reconcile, and we have to take the best out of both worlds, the best what venture capital brings and the best what blockchain brings. And from the world of venture capital, we will definitely have the deal sourcing, the selection, the structuring process, the comprehensive due diligence, the proven legal framework for balancing investors and founders' interests, and an active portfolio management. And the world of blockchain brings transparency, security, scalability, fast and easy transaction of scarce, increased liquidity, as security tokens can be traded on exchanges. I think that might be the most important feature what blockchain could bring to the world of startup investing, that there's this early liquidity in the market. If once you have established security exchanges as an investor, you don't have to wait 10 years for an exit. You probably might be able to sell it much earlier and even make a profit then. And using the blockchain obviously brings more inclusivity. It's an opening to new investor groups, as there are no minimum tickets anymore. So basically with just $100, you might be able to do an equity investment in a startup. So So that brings me to 5 predictions for the blockchain and ICO market. First, the number of blockchain startups in Germany will go from 10 to 1,000 within 2 to 3 years. I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. We are adding to our chain e-directory pretty much new startups on a daily, on a weekly basis. So there's definitely a lot of dynamic in the market. And the current wave of utility tokens, ICOs, will be over by end of 2018. We've talked about that the value of most, definitely not all utility tokens, will go to zero. Being a startup investor, that's not surprisingly, as a startup investor, if you're doing pre-seed investments, you are quite used to it that most of your investments are going to fail, because doing pre-seed investments is pretty much the most risky business or the most risky investments out there you can do, and I think that's not a big difference here to utility tokens. And the second wave of ICOs will be the sale of security tokens, granting investors shareholder rights in the startup, and this will be the ICO 2.0. And finally, Berlin will stay the blockchain capital of Germany, and maybe it become the blockchain capital of Europe. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much.